Good Sunday morning, everyone. Welcome into today's daily Bible reading for January the 15th. Today we're reading together in Genesis chapter 20. We have gotten past the really just the unfortunate chapters of the end of chapter 18, going into chapter 19 and the episode of Sodom and Gomorrah. And unfortunately, we're going to find Abraham and Sarah not exactly giving the best showing of themselves again here in chapter 20, as they find themselves in the land of Gerar and interacting with King Abimelech of this area. We're going to see some old mistakes rear their ugly heads again for Abraham and Sarah, and we're going to see the outcome of that here within this particular situation in Genesis chapter 20. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope that you are enjoying this Lord's Day up to this point. We're excited to be together here in a little while for our Bible studies and worship assembly, and we hope that it'll be a great day as we spend time together with one another, focusing on the Lord and giving time and energy and devotion to Him as we read together to begin with, and then study and worship together here in a little bit. Let me go and get the text of Genesis 20 up on the screen for us, and we will get to reading here within this text. Genesis chapter 20 and verse number 1. From there, seemingly from where Abraham had been viewing the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, from there, Abraham traveled to the region of the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. While he was staying in Gerar, Abraham said about his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." So King Abimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "You are about to die because of the woman you have taken, for she is a married woman, or she belongs to a husband." Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, "Lord, would you destroy a nation even though it is innocent? Didn't he himself say to me, 'She is my sister'? And she herself said, 'He is my brother'? I did this with a clear conscience and clean hands." Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know that you did this with a clear conscience. I've also kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I have not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will certainly die, you and all who are yours." Early in the morning, Abimelech got up, called his servants together, and personally told them all these things, and the men were terrified. Then Abimelech called Abraham in and said to him, "What have you done to us? How did I sin against you so that you have brought such enormous guilt on me and on my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done." Abimelech also said to Abraham, "What made you do this?" Abraham replied, "I thought there is absolutely no fear of God in this place. They will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister and the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. So when God made me wander, or had me wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'Show me your loyalty to me wherever we go, and say about me, he's my brother.' Then Abimelech took flocks and herds and male and female slaves, gave them to Abraham, and returned to his wife Sarah to him. Abimelech said, 'Look, my land is before you. Settle wherever you want.' And he said to Sarah, 'Look, I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a verification of your honor to all who are with you. You are fully vindicated.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so that they could bear children. For Yahweh had completely closed all the wombs in Abimelech's household on account of Sarah, Abraham's wife." And that is Genesis chapter 20. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I think I remember something like this being read already, where Abraham went to a place and said that Sarah was his sister, which is true, but it's not the whole truth. And the people, or the individual who ended up taking Sarah, ended up falling on bad times on account of him taking Sarah. This just sounds really familiar, and if it does, then that's good, and you're remembering what we're reading together, going back to Genesis chapter 12. That's exactly what happened whenever at that time Abram and Sarai and their crew went down to Egypt, and Pharaoh took Sarai into his house, and she did become his wife. and then same thing happened. There was they were struck by God and ended up giving them back, and all that happened. So it happens again here in Genesis chapter 20, although we shouldn't know that it's not like this happened the next week. This is 25 years later. 25 years after that first incident, we have this repeat of chapter 12, where Abraham is traveling because he is a homeless wanderer at this point, and he does not have a land to call his own. So far, the land is going to be given his descendants, not he himself. So he's wandering. They find their way to Gerar, which is in southeast Canaan. And we are reminded about what he said to Sarah about, "You're my sister." Abimelech hears about this. So Abimelech or hears that this is his sister. So more than likely, it seems, probably to create an alliance between himself and Abraham, who would have been a very wealthy, very influential, very powerful person at this point. He takes Sarah as his wife in order to, again, probably to create this alliance. Very similar to, well, maybe a bit different, actually. Different from what happened in Genesis 12. What I was going to say similar is King Abimelech. That name Abimelech, it seems to be like the name Pharaoh. It is a title for the king of this particular area, because there's going to be other Abimelechs later on, not the same people, but holding the same position and title. And what's so unnecessary about this is that, specifically about Abraham not just being completely honest about him feeling the need to continue on in this half truth, is that he's just been confirmed again. It has just been confirmed to him again by Yahweh that they would have a son. So it seems that you would hope that he would understand that God's going to take care of them. There's no need to carry on this charade again, but they do it anyways. Again, though, the Lord comes to him and condemns him, says, you're in trouble because you took a married woman. Notice Abimelech says, well, I feel as if I'm innocent. Are you really going to destroy the entire nation because of this woman, even though I'm innocent? I did this with a clear conscience and a clean heart. I was told this is the reality of the situation. I only acted upon what I was told. You can't really, it just doesn't seem right that I would be punished for something that I was being honest about. And the Lord recognizes that. God recognizes it. He says, yes, I know that you did this with a clear conscience. I've also kept you from doing something even worse and consummating this marriage. So maybe that's tying into verse number 17, that he never was able to sleep with Sarah for some reason that God may have caused to happen. So God gives him the opportunity now to make things right. He says, hey, return her to her husband. He's a prophet. It's the first time the word prophet is mentioned in the scripture. He's going to pray for you. You're going to live. But if you don't correct this mistake, and it seems as if there's a recognition here, this is an honest mistake. If you don't correct this mistake, then things are only going to get worse for you. So Abimelech gets up early in the morning, tells his servants, is very honest and transparent with them, tells them what happens, and then he goes about trying to make things right. He goes to Abraham in verse number 9. Why have you done this? Why have you brought this guilt upon me, my kingdom? You've done things to me that should never be done. What made you do this? And here's Abraham's excuse. Here's him coming clean. He says, I thought that there was absolutely no fear of God in this place. Not necessarily, not even just fear of Yahweh specifically, but fear of any God. There doesn't seem to be, he says, I didn't feel as if there was any sort of reverence here for the supernatural in this place. There's no reverence for any God in this place. So that's why I said to my sister, because again, there's the thought that people would kill a husband to get his wife, but if it's a sister, then there was, again, different than our culture, but back then brothers had power, authority, rights over their sisters, and you would have to ask the brother in order to receive the sister as your husband or as your wife. And it seems as if things went okay with that here in this instance. Didn't want you to kill me, so I'm a brother, and yeah, we can have this alliance by giving you to her, just this whole thing. But notice verse 13. So when God had me wander from my father's house, he's almost incriminating God here, blaming it on him. He's the reason I have to go from place to place. He's the reason we have to have this scheme, because he says, ever since we did this, I said to her, show your loyalty to me wherever we go, and say about me, he's my brother. So this was a continued scheme that they had going on here. This was a continued charade. And it just seems as if this was done because they just want to make sure they were fine, and they didn't seem to trust in the Lord providing them safety all along the way. Again, God just made this promise to him that in a year's time you're going to have a child. If God says that, don't you think he's going to protect you in order to go about and achieve what he says is going to happen? Anyways, when all this has been said, when all of this has been done, we do see something again similar to what happened with Pharaoh, where Pharaoh blessed them tremendously with various material wealth, with a lot of material wealth. Same thing here. Abimelech gives them flocks and herds, male and female servants, and he says, he even says, "Hey, you can settle in the land before you wherever you want," almost as if this is kind of like a no hard feelings type of arrangement. I get it. We're good. Water on the bridge. We're fine. You can live here if you want to. Then he turns to Sarah, though, specifically and says, "I'm giving your brother," almost a snide remark. "I'm giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver," which is a big deal. During this time, somebody have to work like, what I think I read, like 150 years or something like that in order to gain that much silver, like the normal person. So this is a lot of money. Yet he says, "I'm doing it as verification for your honor." And let people know, and let others know, everybody know, that there was no funny business that happened here. No major lines were crossed. You are fully vindicated. And then Abraham does what a prophet does: pray to God, intercedes for Abimelech. And notice that God healed Abimelech, his wife, his female slaves, so they could bear children. There's just a lot of irony here in seeing that the Lord had to completely close the wombs of all of Abimelech's household on account of Sarah, Abraham's wife, because she was barren. So this isn't the case, but it's almost as if her barrenness was contagious among the people. So long as she was there, they would be barren as well. But now that she's leaving, the wombs have been opened up again as well. So just a very interesting story here, where previous shortcomings rear their ugly heads once again. Yet it's so interesting to me that Abimelech, this pagan Canaanite, seems to have a great respect for Yahweh. Almost seems to have more respect for him than Abraham does. He was very honest, very open, very truthful, didn't really pull any punches, just said things exactly as they were, and then calls out Abraham on that. I think that's a very shameful chapter in Abraham's story, that now twice there have been pagans who have called out Abraham on his honesty, who have said, "Hey, you didn't do me right in this situation." And yet God continues to provide for Abraham, and you hope it eventually that Abraham is really going to get the point that, hey, God's going to take care of these things. And I think as we make our way for a couple more chapters, especially once we get to chapter 22, we see really that mountaintop moment for Abraham, where he really embraces the reality that God will take care of these things and that God will provide in the way that needs to be done. So I'm really looking forward to Genesis 22, because it's a really, really powerful chapter. And I think it really shows the growth that Abraham has made, that he has made as he's gotten past many of these shortcomings and weaknesses of his own life. And that just reminds me that even these great men of faith that we see within Scripture, these great faithful heroes, we might call them, they're still people. They're still flawed. They still make mistakes. And if the Bible reader, and specifically those who were part of the story at this time, who might be reading about Father Abraham, that were Jews who were reading this originally, it just shows that they're still looking for the one who would be the absolute perfect example, the one who would perfectly fulfill the will of God in every way. And definitely wasn't Abraham. Abraham did a lot of good things, yet he had low moments like this. We're still looking for the one who would be the seed of the woman, who would have the ultimate victory over the serpent and his forces. So we continue looking for that, and we're going to see another big chapter in that story written as we read tomorrow about the birth of Isaac here in Genesis chapter 21. Looking forward to reading that with you tomorrow as we get into a Monday. Thanks again for tuning in today. Looking forward to being with everyone here in a bit for our Bible studies and our worship assembly. I'm excited, especially today, because we're going to begin a new textual preaching series. I'm going to be going through the Gospel of Mark. It's going to be decently long series. We're gonna probably take a couple of years to do it. Only doing this though on the third and fifth Sundays whenever they show up. That should be able to fit us in to look at the text in a really deep way, to really dissect the text and see what we can learn from this action-packed Gospel of Mark. Really looking forward to getting into that tomorrow as we begin that series, looking at the Messiah on a mission. God's Messiah is on a mission. We're going to consider that Messiah. We're going to consider that mission and what we can learn from Mark's Gospel. Again, thanks for tuning in today, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow as we continue reading. Take care and God bless.